Let's bring John Whitbeck in. We're going to talk about your campaign, John, in a moment. John, a Republican candidate for chairman of supervisors of Loudon County. We understand your campaign is going well. We're going to get to that in a second. John, also the former chairman of the Republican Party of Virginia. John, I know you're following this. What do you make of this mess in the 97th?
Well, first of all, good morning, John.
Hey, John.
I feel like I haven't talked to you in forever. It's so great to hear your voice and be on the show. I always appreciate your friendship and having me on. Mike Wade, you're darn right. He is bad, Mike Wade. There's no question. A veteran of many fights, around the state. But, when are we going to stop doing this to ourselves? Every single year there's something that has to go down where we manipulate party processes. And I'll tell you, what we're doing in Loudoun County right now is a unified group is something special, and it's really a model for the rest of the state to be watching.
How did you do that?
Well, I think, it's necessity, if nothing else. I mean, when you start looking at the state and you think, okay, so how do we win elections going forward? Moms and dads around suburban Northern Virginia are the ones that are hurting us. They're just not listening to what we have to say anymore. And we got back to the basics. We're talking about transportation, tolls. People are red hot about toll roads, school safety, all the things that, that they deal with in their daily lives. And it's really resonating around Northern Virginia.
So, John, how did you – I want to get back to what you said earlier about until we stop this hand-to-hand combat shenanigans. Like, it seems like every cycle the Republican Party has one of these nasty convention rigomania battles that goes on, like the one we're seeing now in my neck of the woods here in New Kent. How do we stop this? Like, what's the plan?
Well, I think at the end of the day, people have to realize what we realized up here in Northern Virginia. We are not winning elections. Mm-hmm. And one of the reasons we have been losing elections is because we fight the primaries all the way to the end in November. And I think one of the things that we can start with doing is reforming the way that we deal with the selection of nominating processes. First of all, everybody that's dealt with the RPB in the last few years knows the fights over conventions versus primaries. And instead of taking a hardline position and making that a litmus test of some kind, figure out the process that's best for the particular day or the particular election and do that, whichever one helps us win in November. And everything we do should be geared towards one question: how does this help us win in November?
Absolutely.
Well, I'll give you an example. There was a firehouse primary in the 25th District this Saturday. Chris Runyon, Marshall Patty, and John Fox or Robert Fox. I can't remember his first name. And that was, look, it was a campaign. I mean, I did a robocall for Chris Runyon. Chris Runyon, I backed him because he was with me early in the Trump effort. But he won. Runyon won that. But, all three parties came together. They said they're going to back the winner. The firehouse primary was over Saturday, and now they're all working towards victory. The problem with these conventions is, I mean, they just stir such hatred amongst people and such internal battles that they never get to unification, Mike.
John, you and I have been together before, and it's not the convention, because way back when Rob Whitman took a special convention and won, I remember, Paul Joseph's main opposition walking up and writing him a max check, and everybody went out of the room in one of, 7 people running in a convention. It's not the process. It's when exactly what you said. It's when someone chooses a process that manipulates for their benefit, and then they run outside of the rules, and people don't understand. The average public, all they know is, is what we're, like you're saying, John, what our message is. And it should always be what is the best way to nominate a candidate so that we win in a general election. Because when you take away the right for people to know in the general election what our party is doing in its nomination processes, we're hidden. You know this as well as I do. We had 2 cycles statewide where we ran conventions, and people lost us. I mean, we're in a world of 6-second mentalities, unfortunately, and you have to be in front of people all the time in the media, and we don't need to be in front of the media in an RTD article with the chairman walking out like a little girl. I mean, it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing to other candidates like yourself. It's embarrassing to my friends that are party officers, our chairman, Jack Wilson. And what needs to happen in my mind is people need to stop hiring the same group of people. They need to be put out of business. They don't need to be operating. We don't need PACs like Middle Resolution trying to put its will on the Republican Party. And this is a great example. And let me say one last thing. We offered advice to Chairman Miller that if he would have made what most people don't know, but Chairman Whitbeck knows, the uniform ratio 1 in 100, there would have been no overfiling. There could have been almost 2,400 delegates from Hanover. Instead, they used 1 in 225, which tells me they calculated exactly what they wanted to do to suppress the vote of people and rig the convention.
Just so the layman listening to us that's not really involved in the shenanigans that goes on, what Mike Wade is referring to is everybody that files for delegate gets to vote, no matter how many they're allotted, and their vote is just divvied up by a percentage, and then it depends on who shows up. Instead, what they did is people that were not favorable to their candidate, they made them alternates, which basically kicked them out of the meaningful process. So that's just more nonsense that goes on. I want to get to John Whitbeck. John, you've run this, and you've seen it. You also were a candidate for state senate. You won a convention, then got beat in a special election in the general. You're in Loudon County. Everybody says that's going blue. You're telling me you can win in Loudon County countywide. How?
So as a Republican, the most important thing you can do is stick to issues in Northern Virginia. We can win elections in Northern Virginia. We have several examples of it in these off years. And it's sort of a 3 or 4 part strategy. Number one, transportation. Everything that we do in Northern Virginia revolves around transportation. Housing and development and transportation go hand in hand. Schools and education and transportation go hand in hand. Everything's geared around our roads and the freeways we drive on. And the big issue in Northern Virginia, especially in Loudon County, is our Greenway. We have a toll road that runs from Leesburg down to Dulles Airport, where the tolls are just punishing drivers. And when we knock doors and our campaign knocks doors, the number one issue that we're hearing about in the Ashburn, Dulles area is this toll issue. And people don't care whether you're a Democrat or a Republican. And a bipartisan group of supervisors in Loudon County, Democrats and Republicans, have opposed these high tolls, everybody but my opponent. And, talking about those issues gets you where you want to go. Number two, school safety. It's an issue that not a lot of local leaders campaign on. It's something that I'm 100% committed to because I have all my kids are in public schools. And we introduced a plan with the sheriff to put a school resource officer in every single public school in Loudon County. That's a police officer in every single school in Loudon County. Nobody's ever done that before. And when I talk to people, I talk to teachers, which in most teachers, sorry to say, are not Republicans. When I talk to teachers, talk to parents, again, it doesn't matter whether you're Republican or Democrat. People want their child to be safe when they send them to public school. So when you talk about those issues that transcend partisanship, you talk about the issues that transcend party politics, and in an era of absolute partisan, disastrous rancor, punching through requires you to hit people right where they care most, their kids' education, and their ability to drive to work in a reasonable amount of time.
So who would pay for the resource officers at the schools? How is that funded?
Well, Loudon County has an exceptional economy. I mean, our economic development is so powerful right now because of a few things. Number one, we're the second best tourist destination besides Virginia Beach because we have our wineries, our breweries, and our rural economy, our farms, our tourism industry. Number two, a lot of people don't like them because we're not putting them in the right place, but our data centers, we are the data center capital of the East Coast, if not the world. and the majority of the world's internet traffic comes through here. So that the tax revenue from that comes incredibly high these days. Number three, we are the richest county in the country per capita, which means that folks are living in expensive homes. So Loudoun County has such a great economy that we have an incredible amount of resources available to us. And we already allocate enough money to the sheriff's office every year to pay for this program. And so we're not going to raise anybody's taxes or do anything to hit people directly. It's going to all come from existing funds, and it's going to be a great program.
I tell you what, John, if you can win this race, and you sound pretty confident. I know I saw your fundraising results. You beat everybody in Virginia. Forget about just for your particular office. This is going to really be a bellwether because everybody is telling me, look, all of Northern Virginia's gone blue. Loudoun County is next. Prince William after that, or at the same time. Then it's over. Game, set, match. Republicans will never win here again in the next generation. Bad Mike Wade. We're with Bad Mike Wade, political consultant, Republican consultant, live in studio from Southeast Virginia. We've also got John Whitbeck on the line. John, former chairman, Republican Party of Virginia, and now a candidate for chairman of the supervisors of Loudoun County. Bad Mike Wade, you had a comment.
Yeah, John, I want to let you know you're on point. As you know,
John Whitbeck.
John Whitbeck, yes. I'm sorry, John Whitbeck, former chairman, sir. You're on point about message. And I think the greatest example that shows that you can win and better your community is a candidate named Dan Schmidt that won in Henrico. And he run in a Brickland supervisor district, and I was lucky to be a small part of that race and kind of blocked and tackled a little bit. But Dan won in a district that Abigail Spanberger beat Dave Bratt. And there's a clear issue. There's a message. There was an inclusive campaign. That's key, as you know. And everybody was available to come in. There was no litmus test to be part of the campaign like Bratt's campaign. And Bratt, lost in the same manner that Dan won because Dan was focused on talking to his people about how he was going to represent them on the Board of Supervisors. We didn't talk about D.C. They didn't talk about anything else. They talked about being a Board of Supervisors. So Republicans and Republican candidates can win in their districts if they can learn to talk to their voters instead of being litmus test people who have this far-right advantage. And when people like Diana Shores and Chris Shores and all the other folks realize that you can't win with 20%, it takes 51% to win an election, the Republican Party will be a better place.
All right, John.
Yeah, that's Mike, that's an incredible point. I mean, I know all about that race. I studied it very closely at the end of last year in preparation for deciding whether to run. And you're exactly right. Hit the issues that matter. Henrico, Loudoun, Fairfax, all the places we need to rebuild, it starts at the local level. And that's why people should be watching my race and races around these suburban areas and get involved and support them, even if you don't live in the communities themselves, because this is how we rebuild and this is how we come back and this is how we change the message to be winning again in Virginia.
Bad Mike Wade, can Whitbeck win this race?
Absolutely, he can. He's on point, and he knows his locality, and he's a good guy, and he cares, and he's got a family that lives there. And the reason he's running is because he's like me. We have children, and we're leaving something behind here, and we're activists. There's no doubt. But I mean, and my sons know I've given up a lot of time in their lives to be an activist. But they also know what they've gotten out of it is their rights protected, and a better community, and a more solid future. And just like the race Chris's piece is in, his candidate is focusing on Medicaid expansion, okay, a situation that he can't even answer when asked, what would he have done? So it's important for Republicans to understand the issues and run on them.
All right, we're out of time for this segment. I want to thank Bad Mike Wade, political consultant, Southeast Virginia, former chairman RPV John Whitbeck, now candidate, chairman of supervisors, Loudoun County. You're on the John Fredericks Radio Network. We'll be right back. Stay with us.